We've all heard of the transfer portal, but there's another portal, the Spite portal, and it's the one where Tom Izzo goes shopping. You're listening to Can't Read, Can't Write. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Can't Read, Can't Write, the podcast that proves Spartans can talk. I'm Mike Jones, joined as always by the man cosplaying as the best boy grip before recording, Kevin Greck. Greckers, my best boy. How you doing?
You know what a grip does. Yeah, in a movie yet, right? You know what a grip does? Mm-hmm. That's what a grip does. That's an obscure reference. Listeners, if you know that reference, do hit us up both on YouTube and on whatever medium you want. You've won Twitter competition.
Which we need to get into the second set of rules this week.
That's my rule. If you understand that reference, you've won.
We do want to thank, of course, everyone for listening or watching. If we could ask a small favor, please share the pod with Spartans in your life. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram or YouTube at Spartan_pod. Greg, what are we doing this week on the podcast?
Well, Greenball. Well, we've got to talk about how the program is imploding. The football program, that is, of course. Thumbs up. It's still there. It's still got it.
You were so confident you turned it off.
Then we'll go off Grand River. And then, as always, we'll take your Twitter questions.
All right. Yeah, let's I think before we get into the imploding thing, let's do our due diligence on things that have happened, right?
Yeah. Just run through them as quickly as possible, because my Lord and my God, the idea of going through each one of these. Oof.
Yeah. So we got a commitment. Damari Malone, linebacker out of Dakota. That's somewhere in Michigan.
Michigan. Northwest Dakota, Michigan.
It's in Macomb, apparently. He's the 9th ranked player in the state of Michigan, number 64 linebacker, according to 24/7. He's 11th and 83, according to the 24/7 composite. You got that? You got the profile up, or you want me to go through the peer list, Kevin?
Peer list me.
All right. We got a Minnesota. We got a Pitt. We got your entire MAC, really. Illinois, Indiana, Kansas. Can't forget about UMass, Rutgers, West Virginia, and literally the entire MAC.
So really took it to the Burt Bielema on this one. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, just going back at Burt. And then today, recording on Monday, picked up a commit from tight end Emmett Bork, who is 6'6", 240. That plays as someone going into their junior year or senior year, and who I think maybe has a offer list that's okay, but my understanding is it was rising. So this was a good early lockup, but also took it from Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers.
Beat Coach Sig on this one.
Did you see Purdue also just landed a 5-star?
Good for them. I look forward to them beating someone.
Purdue.
Yeah, Purdue in it somewhere. Congratulations.
We've also got some transfers. I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce this name wrong, but Legend Cavazos, defensive back.
Cavazos.
Yeah, we'll only put extra spice on it. Heard a lot in 2023 while he was at UNC. Before that, he was at OSU. We also picked up a defensive tackle in Jalen Satchel from Old Dominion and Marcellus Pullman, linebacker from the U. I guess the thing that's interesting to me, Greg, about the recruiting. So we've gotten 2 linebacker commitments out of this top 2 linebackers out of the state of Michigan, both top 10 players in the state. And then the way that Smith has been recruiting around, obviously backfilling some of the exits that we've had from the program, but they're notably positions that Tucker didn't recruit, like, at all. I think Derek Harmon was the last defensive tackle commit under Mel Tucker. Maybe it was, Alex Van Sumeren was the last who's been hurt the last 2 years. But I don't think in the last 2 classes of Tucker, he didn't have a defensive tackle commit. And then under Hazelton's 4-2-5, they just recruited fewer linebackers than obviously Rossi's system requires. And so while you can look at the linebacker room on paper and be like, that might actually be one of the strengths of this team, ironically, there's a whole bunch of guys who are probably leaving, and then Jordan Hall. And so, it feels like that the work that they're doing is a little bit more thoughtful around what are the pieces that you need to sustain a program instead of backfilling via the transfer portal. And obviously we just talked about some transfers, but they tend to either be 1 year and you're out, or we're backfilling from a class that didn't see any additions.
Right, where we didn't recruit those specific positions. So, great activity is happening. I think we should just, for the moment, be glad after all of the attrition that's happened that now the coaching staff gets to go and spend some of that money that's been freed up that we keep hearing about in the NIL. So I'm just looking for warm bodies at this point. I appreciate, Jonesy, that you went, you dressed it up, you talked about the whole thing. There's a method to this, but I just don't care right now. I want dudes in the program, and then we'll sort out on the field if this plan is working or not. That's what I care about. Give me dudes, extra dudes for me, please.
Okay, I'm going to let that one sit for a second.
That seems to be the problem.
So we also touched on the Vandemark departure, I don't know, a week or 2 ago. Who cares? Apparently following Coach Cap, who I had forgotten was at Alabama, but has committed to Alabama.
Some of them did land in places. Some of those coaching staff departures did land somewhere. What did you think? What did you think about that announcement? What stood out to you on the Gino Vandemark announcement? Because we've seen a lot of these now, and there was a thing that really ground my gears. You know what it is? Did you pick up on it? It was that he was wearing his MSU. Usually, what they do is they just fully Photoshop in the other team's jersey on whatever they were wearing, or probably more accurate, Photoshop their face on another player. But this one, he was in his MSU jersey, but it was partially torn away to reveal the Alabama stuff underneath.
I missed this.
And I was like, I don't care for it. I decided to do it here. I brought my props so that I could demonstrate to you.
This is a prop comedy show.
It is. We are truly the Carrot Top of MSU podcastery. So, look at it. It's as if to imply that everything in green and white was always a front, and there was always that crimson underneath. And I don't like it. And I'll be zipping this back up. The prop is over. The prop comedy it has concluded now. Mm-hmm. It really was irksome to me. I greatly prefer the just respect my decision. This is where I'm going now. It seems like a personal attack. The ripping away of the jersey. And I won't stand for it. Gino Vandermark is now off the Christmas list. He won't be getting a card this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I think that's probably very upsetting for him as he's hearing it now with everyone else. But
Sure.
it's just not how it's done, Michael Jones. It's just not. It's uncouth.
I know we're gonna have Sheehan on at some point this summer to do our ranking our favorite long twos.
Yeah.
Put them in a quality matrix, if you will.
How does one choose of all the long twos?
But I think we should add to the list another segment of greatest transfer portal affronts, and they need to be really petty things like that.
Or the entire Mangum family saga is we're about to get into as well.
Yeah, that's a great transition. And we've got some questions on it, so we won't dwell, I think, too long here. But yeah, let's reserve our, I guess, feelings for the questions, because I think there's some of that there. But I'm curious, a great number of former players came up and like the Mangum just needed to stop talking because but the counterpoint that person was making was, I don't care about what you did back then. That's not the reality that we're living in now.
Sure.
And obviously, I think it's worth mentioning here that MSU is hosting currently, or just hosted, someone from U of M in the transfer portal here, and then obviously took Van Sumeren as a transfer. The wild difference between those particular transfers and Mangum is that Mangum was clearly a projected starter.
Right.
And so anyway, I guess what are your thoughts on the player's point versus the counter on it's not this world, like it's not the same world?
So for those that might not be aware, there was some subtweeting going on, and I think I'm using that term properly, by some former players about Mangum potentially visiting or transferring ultimately to U of M. And basically the crux of their argument was, not only is it that we didn't hit the bricks when we had opportunities, when things got a little tight, it's also none of us would ever consider for a moment going to that program of all programs. And I think Tony Lippett even said basically, like, when we see you on the field next year, you better have your helmet strapped. Like, you better be ready to go. And I don't think that was a tunnel reference. I think that was a reference to you're going to get popped on the field in an illegal play. Here's what I'll say about all of that. And we've discussed it here. If you are an individual that's an MSU fan at U of M, because of course I think we all knew at MSU fans that or MSU students that went to, or that were U of M fans, those people had terrible judgment. They couldn't be trusted.
They're weird.
Yeah, it's just not done. If you're an MSU fan at U of M, you're like a freedom fighter trying to take down a corrupt institution from the inside. There's just a stark difference between those two. And the idea that not only would you transfer in conference, but to go to that place of all places is, I think, exactly what the former players were getting at, because they're not choosing to go after or subtweet the 25 other guys that transferred out of MSU. They are very clearly referencing one and only one. And when I
do think there was some subtweeting of Harmon. I don't mean to throw.
So basically, it's you should have been happy if you were a starter, one, and then also definitely if you are going to go, don't go there. And I think that's fair, and I think that's also not what the Mangum family chose to interpret in all of this. Like, they chose to take this road of like, hey, it's free agency now. You go. You got to go where you got the best opportunity. And it's like, that's not, they're not going after all of the guys that are going after just the blanket best opportunity. They're going after your guy who had who had what he wanted, was getting an NIL check, had a starting position, and was going to have a potential future here in a new coaching staff. Had all of those things and is choosing to go to the arch rival. That's what they're focused on. And the Mayhem family chose not to engage with that element to the argument. And I think that was what, like, I didn't find it to be totally compelling on their part. Like, you have to address the rivalry angle in all of this,
right,
if you're going to refute these arguments. And they didn't, and they shouldn't. And Jaden better have his shit strapped, as Tony Lickett said.
It does. I do wish I pine in this moment for having a Keon Coleman or even a Jaden Reed back on this roster.
Yeah,
because I do think every single one of our wide receivers has entered the transfer portal at some point in time or another.
But you know what? This is the time to bring back Plaxico. Go on YouTube and watch that video of Plaxi blowing up that Michigan corner or Notre Dame corner. I don't remember what it was. We should bring back Plaxi. I think he's got a little bit of scholarship time left. So I think that's the call we've got to make on this one.
He might be busy with his OnlyFans, where you can look at the hole in his leg from.
Better than other holes, I suppose.
On an OnlyFans, yeah, that's fair. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned it earlier, and I want to give credit. I know Sheehan has already had a bit of this conversation on his podcast, and we're coming a little bit late, but CBS ran an article, winners and losers of the transfer portal, and Michigan State was selected as a loser. Now, this was coming off the heels of Barrow and Harmon entering the portal. I think this might have even predated the Mangum news. I think there's it might be factually wrong because you're ignoring landing the top quarterback in the transfer portal on your team, right? Like, yeah. But I'm curious what you think. I've got some thoughts on this, but I'm curious what you think on sort of this notion that we were a loser this year in the transfer portal.
Well, I mean, it's a snapshot in time, right? And certainly the last time that I was featured on this podcast, there was a certain energy here that felt like we were the losers of the transfer portal at that time. But the bleeding has, for the most part, stopped. I mean, obviously, no programs are bleeding right now. There's a stay. But now is the other side. Now it's, how is this staff going to replace these guys? And I think that's the essential part. You need that information to truly determine if MSU is a loser in the transfer portal. And we simply don't have that yet. So at the point in time that article was published, I get it. I understand where that came from. I think it's actually relatively fair-ish. Like, you have to get really into the minutia, which guys left under what circumstances and what their upside was and where they went. You got to really dig into that to start to justify that, hey, maybe MSU's not a net loser in the transfer portal, before you start to consider the guys that are coming in, including those that we've already covered here today. But what's your take? I mean, when we got a guy from Miami, guy from UNC, guy from Old Dominion of all places, like, how can we be a loser in the transfer portal? Am I right?
Arizona State, not to mention the Oregon State guys that we poached, which normally you wouldn't talk about, but that was a top 25 team last year. And so a couple other teams that have lost equal numbers to the portal this year. Alabama, Washington.
Losers.
But I think beyond that, to me, looking at if we're going to zero in less on the quantity of folks that have left and more on, in particular, some of those starters that have left or starter adjacent, I guess I'd say the piece of this that strikes me as whatever is I'm comfortable with the idea that culture is a real thing that needs to be built through a program. And I feel like we have no choice but to embrace the notion that what Jonathan Smith did at Oregon State proves that there is that running a program in a modified but D'Antonio-esque tradition is still possible. And so if there are dudes leaving that Mel Tucker recruited because they're going to chase a payday, then I'm fine with that. Because what truly were my expectations for this next year? I really love to make a bowl game. But, I'd like to see some competent coaching. I'd like to see development. Sure. But, what really were my expectations?
Yeah.
They weren't particularly high. And so I'm fine with the idea that people who are attracted to a culture that put a G-Wagon on the field are gone. I just don't care. And so, if you're leaving a starting role at a program of this brand level, I don't get, I just don't, I can't care.
Right.
Because it's not as if we couldn't put people into the pros here. The MAC does it all the time.
And so we used to do it every single year until we didn't.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. But I guess I think beyond that, I just the notion that we're losers in all of this, maybe, but I just beyond the apathy and fatigue that's setting in around covering all of this and thinking about it because of there's been a departure in how we do business here. I have to believe that there's a cultural component to this that I can live with and sleep with at night. That actually makes us winners potentially in all of this.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. It's going to depend on what we get in the long run. So we'll find out.
Should we talk our favorite Spite King, Tom Izzo?
Yeah. He's spiting us. Proving us to be losers, as it turns out, because we had kind of mourned this already and moved on. Because the people that do this for a living had told us that all indications were that Tom Izzo was not going to make a replacement at the 5 spot.
Can we just take a slight break to revisit why we started this podcast in the first place?
Everyone. Someone's going to feel a little smug here for a moment. Go ahead, Michael.
We just remembered watching all of the football coverage in particular in preseason and being like, the press people don't know anything more than any of us do. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe that just is a little bit true for all the sports. But anyway.
Shots fired. and here I thought that we had been humbled of that. Here I thought we began to understand that it's a more complicated, woven tapestry of information. But no, Mike Jones just like, no, we're better. No,
didn't say we're better.
Oh yeah, we're all the same.
MSU baby, I can do whatever you can do.
Introduce us. Who are we talking about here?
Sorry, delicious rum. All right.
Should we do that? Should we toast to this potential? Should we talk about what we're drinking tonight?
You're gonna make me pour more? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely I am.
All right, dear listener. I'm drinking the Papa's Pilar.
Pilar, Pilar, Papa Pilar.
It is a dark rum finished in rye whiskey barrels. It's in a very handsome bottle with this chain so you don't lose the cap. Because you get into this and
sometimes you misplace. Well, once you take the cap off, you got no more need for it. I thought the chain was that you could hang it off your Gene Code jeans, and now you don't need a hip flask anymore. You've got the chain.
What do you think I'm going to do?
Yeah,
yes.
Very good.
But it is sort of shaped to that point like a water flask.
Yeah, it does look like you should be out in the desert, and then that should be covered in like a very rough leather. I'm drinking the tequila comisario, which is a perfectly adequate tequila to put in a margarita, of which I had several over the weekend, and they were lovely. I'm a little margaritaed out at the moment. That's why the stop is remaining on. But really good for a margarita. So highly recommend. How's the Pilar? How's Pilar Part 2? Are you just like are you a dark rum kick right now? What do you got going on? What's happening in your life? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I guess I like something that's dark but sweet. Sort of like a summer night.
A Kevin Greck type, as it's known, dark but sweet.
Yeah, that's how you're known, for sure.
That's how people identify me. Can we talk about the 7-foot gentleman from Longwood?
Seisman Zapala, yes. From a 7-foot center from Longwood, who I think averaged like 10.6 rebounds last year at Longwood. Before that was at Utah State and was a role player there. I meant to do some research about who was the center at Utah State when he was there.
Yeah, should have done that. Huge mistake.
Because
people rely on
maybe there was a good center there. But
so the most important thing about Simon, he's 7 foot tall. That's the most important thing. Second most important thing, senior. So final year, coming out of Longwood, pretty efficient, get some boards, doesn't shoot outside of what he's supposed to do. He's shooting 67% from 3 last year. That's 2 makes on 3 attempts.
I mean, that's what's his? Why am I blanking on his name? Nick. Help me out here. Center, MSU, shot 100% from 3.
I'm not sure who you're referring to.
Played with Xavier Tillman, but got hurt. Nick Ward, come on, Ward.
Nick Ward shot 100% from 3. I thought he shot infinity % from 3 because he never attempted one in his entire career.
I think he's 1 for 1.
Mm-hmm. So one concern in all of this, and it's good that we don't have our listener guest on right now because we would begin seeing the meltdown right now. Shooting 67% also from the free throw line. So that's pretty mid in today's college basketball. That's not really where you want to be. But shooting relatively well from 2. For some reason, shoots way better on far 2s than close 2s.
Oh, is that surprising for Tom Izzo?
Then maybe that was the appeal. Maybe that's what Tom saw and was like, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. So
this is an insurance policy, right? This is one of my centers get hurt.
It's got to be. I mean, it was described to us earlier today as a raising of the floor situation, and that's exactly what that would be. It's one of the guys that I expect to play gets hurt, but at the same time, like, it didn't need to be like this. This could have been a ceiling raiser. It's a floor raiser. The football team is in floor raise mode.
Yeah.
The basketball
Yes.
team needs to be in ceiling raise mode.
Yes.
And I get, on one hand, I'm inclined to just be like, all right, instead of wasting another scholarship again, as we're wont to do in the basketball program, at least it's going somewhere. But is this better than Madi Sissoko? Like,
well,
marginally, I guess, on offense. I guess maybe it's marginally better than Madi Sissoko. Hopefully, is what we're looking at.
Yeah, he's certainly taller. I think the other complication in all of this is that I think today it was reported that a player named, I believe, Great Osborne, committed to Washington Center for a reported $2 million NIL package.
A person whose name we are mentioning on the podcast for the first time.
Sure. Well, so in fairness, Kevin, I have to kind of side with Tom here about because you're saying we're in ceiling raising mode, which means that Tom has a pretty great floor.
Yeah.
And so if you go out and you pay some dum-dum $2 million, what does that do to your locker room? And what does that do in the long term to the floor that Tom has worked so hard to build?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a doubt that if Tom thought, like, I need a real piece to get a natty this year, I refuse to believe that he's not that competitive, that he would do. But it won't make. But like, does that ruin your team chemistry? Like, how does that affect what you're trying to accomplish? And I gotta believe that Xavier Booker, who hopefully is a lottery pick next year, if it's a good year, hopefully he's a lottery pick.
Hopefully.
But like, what does that do if you brought in some center who's fine to good?
Xavier Booker, I don't think he's not, he doesn't feel threatened by a center because he and his team want him to be a 4.
No, the point is, I think the point is that even if the rest of the team recognizes, oh, I get why Book's getting paid. I get it.
Yeah.
Let's say he's making let's say he's making $750.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring in some 14-9 chuckle fuck for $2 million.
Sure.
That the rest of the team doesn't look around and say, the fuck is going on here? Why shouldn't I leave?
Yeah, that might disrupt things. All right, understood. I get what you're saying now.
So, I don't know. Yeah. I think this is. I'm equally frustrated that Tom seemingly signaled forever that he wasn't getting a center. I'm appreciative that he got insurance policy from a guy who almost certainly has different expectations than Madi Sissoko would have had coming into this year.
Sure.
So let's call them equivalents. Let's call, though it actually watching tape, this guy can catch a ball, so that's a plus. But I'm not sold on the idea that in the long run that Tom Izzo his version doesn't work out. It needs a little tweaking.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about this. I think we literally talked about this last year, that this kind of transfer, the kind of center he would have needed to get was someone like this, maybe a better version, but someone 1 year only.
Yeah, I think I'd like 20% more on this, though. 20%.
If this was someone
upside.
coming from Toledo, you'd feel better, right? Than Longwood.
Yeah. Yes. If you just made the move from Utah State to Longwood,
then landed at Michigan State.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Then to make the massive jump to MSU, on paper, that shouldn't happen ever, basically. It would have to be super extenuating circumstances of like catastrophic injury. Yeah. It would have to be like catastrophic injury happened and other extenuating circumstance. This is just very strange to go from Utah State to Longwood to MSU. So hopefully this is a Ben Carter situation where we won't see him until the second round.
We have the comp and Xavier Booker.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Oh, I hate you. All right. MSU's women's golf. We're not going to go hole by hole, but we'll note that they punched their ticket and are headed to the NCAA championship round. So congrats to them. I believe also a new hire there too.
Yeah. Things are happening. Women's golf school.
All right. Should we go off Grand River here in a second? Yeah. Should we say a nice thing about Mama's Merc?
Sure. Of course. Always. Okay. Never not.
Mama's Mercantile and Eatery. Clear Lake Road. Off 94. Truly, I can say, folks, it's getting popular down there. So you know what you can do to set yourself apart in this elite establishment? Just go ahead, get in there. Just whisper, "Can't read, can't write."
Yep.
And they'll take 10% off your bill. Great food, great drinks. I think a bar, like a proper bar setup coming very soon. So get into Mama's Mercantile and Eatery. Great food. Greg is frequenting it.
I heard that if you ask really, really nicely, they'll show you. And there's a pane of glass up, just like there would be at like a museum or like a Greenfield Village or something. There's a pane of glass, and behind it is the room where we record the podcast on occasion, and they'll let you see that. So it's in the process of being named a historical, place,
sure.
Monument, a national monument, I think is what the Biden administration is considering. But anyway, can't read, can't write, get you 10% off and get you on the cutting edge of what will be a naturally historic place in the near future.
Greg, I think we actually should really ping Petra and insist that there be some homage to wood paneling at some point in time.
That's just a given. Yeah, we know that will happen. There's no doubt about that taking place.
Yeah. All right, let's head off Grand River. And I meant to pull the link up. I'm going to pull it up on my phone here. But if I told you that there was a survey about name, image, and likeness in college sports, you'd remember the text I sent over, yes?
Correct.
Okay. Can you, while I bring that up, can you say a few words? Vamp for me, baby. Vamp for me.
Oh, we're not the first one doing the survey. You're not talking about our survey. You're talking about some other person's survey.
No, I'm sending the one I sent over. You replied to it, in fact.
Oh no, this is what happens when we don't do enough prep before the cut. Now, this is
all right. So here's the gist: that we have been talking about how this is an untenable, unsustainable model. You, the Twitter questioners, have voiced frustration about the transfer portal and the degree to which name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal. I want to be very clear that sort of Venn diagram being a circle have presented complications to fandom. So apparently there was a survey taken of Americans about name, image, and likeness, and 3/4 of Americans broadly support college players being able to make money off of their name, image, and likeness, and 4 in 5 fans of the NCAA, which, to be clear, that phrasing is tenuous. No one is a fan of the NCAA.
Yeah, I guess maybe the NCAA's mom might be considered a fan of the NCAA, and she thinks it's great. I know what you're referring to now. Continue.
Yeah.
I would say this is more of a
pluralities.
poll than a survey, but continue.
Okay, sorry. You're right. Should have been.
There's a distinction, but it's fine.
Pluralities of Americans said that changes such as name, image, and likeness money and liberalized transfer procedures did not affect their view of college sports, we'll call it, instead of any of this. 33%, in fact, said that they had a more positive. This is about NIL. Let me get to 30% said that prominent students transferring between schools improved their enjoyment of college sports, as to 26% who said they don't like such movement. So I assume on the 1 to 5 scale, we actually probably saw a pretty standardized curve on that, if you will.
Okay.
But that, there's a fairly prominent voice on NIL on Twitter that we follow, Winter Sports Law, who's an attorney in this space, who I'm convinced is just rabid free market, like insane person.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone truly has a problem conceptually with people being able to capitalize on their value.
Right.
I'm not convinced that the values we're seeing are, first of all, have anything to do with their name, image, and likeness.
So that's the point that I wanted to get to in all of this. One, just to talk to the poll for a moment, something tells me that for the normies, if you're listening to this podcast, you're not representative of the American public. For the normies, I don't think they've fully gotten to understand what's happening yet in college sports. This is all sort of happening behind the scenes, and they haven't really experienced what's happening. College football fans and basketball fans might feel very differently than the outcome of this poll. The other thing that
I'd be curious on the transfer portal report where they said 26% had an unfavorable view, and I'm obviously splicing here, but I'd be super curious if you dissected it by not normies, what percentage, how that fluctuated.
Psycho fans versus normies in the crosstabs, and see what happens from there.
Even not psycho fan, but like I follow my team. Like I read my newspaper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
I subscribe to the LSJ for the sports section. I keep up to date on things as they're happening.
Nice I might even have that.
A vague idea of what's happening in like recruiting. I think the longest term analogous thing would be like people that follow recruiting in college sports versus those that don't. And I think that's a good arbiter of like how into this are you really? Like how dedicated to your life is all this? And I would bet that we will find, and this is my prior, I could be wrong in all of this. I would bet that we would find that America generally will start to change its opinion of this whole process over the course of the next several seasons. I could be mistaken about that.
Yeah, I also think that. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say to your point, and I'll hold. You complete your thought, and then I'm going to move us slightly into a different direction from here.
Okay. I think, as with all polls, phrasing matters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you frame the notion that a college student athlete should be able to transfer whenever they want, I actually think if you asked that specific question without additional context to rabid fans, most of us probably would actually agree with that sentiment.
And even with my rabid fandom, I might agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, no, that's but the question of how your ability to transfer schools impacts your athletics is a different question altogether.
Yeah.
And so, most folks at this point in time, I truly saw people tweeting about the Great Osborne thing or whatever the hell his name is, and like, I can't believe this guy's making $2 million. Who cares? I don't care that he's making $2 million, other than to say that that's a overblown number for a dude who's probably going to be good at best.
Well, I would say that his name, his image, and his likeness is definitely worth every bit of that $2 million.
That name in particular,
without a doubt, easy.
But the reality is that we've obviously lived in a system where institutions were making money off of, and we're on, when this was all coming out, we were very much on record on saying that it was bullshit that schools were making money off of the backs of these players, and that they couldn't do things to make money on their own. That they were actually prohibiting additional ways for them to make money.
And that would manifest itself in ridiculous and hilarious ways over time. Continue.
Right. And I don't even think we have I've got questions about it, but I don't fight the notion that revenue sharing makes sense, indeed, sure, because they're generating the revenue. What's lost in the current system, though, is that the only reason they're generating revenue is because of psychopaths like you, me, and you, dear listener, who consume all of this shit and care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this notion that, and this kind of circles all the way back to the Mangum fuck who's visiting Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only reason you people who are probably not going pro, almost all of you are not. You'll be lucky to make a mini camp, almost all of you.
Yep.
The only reason you matter is because I'm a fucking psychopath.
That's exactly where I was going with this. So as I was watching the Michigan Panthers play DC in the USFL, because my guy Brian Lewerke, fellow podcaster, we support our own, was the quarterback, which was hilarious because he led the team on a touchdown scoring drive, mostly by handing the ball off. Turns out the Michigan Panthers, pretty stout rushing attack.
Love
immediately
it. Michigan.
Immediately benched. So
really?
Well, they have two quarterbacks. They go back and forth. Towards the end of the game, when it was in hand, they actually had three quarterbacks. Because, like, as you're going into the postseason, why not introduce a third quarterback situation?
Oh my God. Is Harlan Barnett coaching this team?
It really felt that way, including in the press conference afterwards. I did start to watch the press conference, and it was you couldn't follow it. It was ridiculous. Anyway, these guys around here.
This new podcast, we need to set up a new one just following the Michigan Panthers.
Let me tell you why we don't. These guys are making $5,500 a week. These guys are being broadcast on national television. I guess this was ESPN, I think, if memory serves. But, like, no one cares. And as I was watching it, I became more and more certain that this will never catch on, that this will be another failed attempt. And that's because it's the brands that matter first and foremost. And without the university and, like, the fact that 40,000 people are here on campus getting their educations and they need something to do on Saturday, or in the case of the NFL, they had this antitrust exemption, and they're owned by billionaires, and they were able to sort of formulate this over time in a way that they didn't have to play by all of the rules. Without those two things happening, it seems almost certain to me that there won't ever be another league that catches on, because the value of football, when I was watching it, the value of football that you were seeing, the skill level seemed like college 1.25, whereas
Sure.
the NFL seems more like college times 2, college times 2.5. So like the product isn't better. No one's ever going to get emotionally invested to these teams, and it's going to be difficult to continue to support them in the long run, which gets back to your point of really it's the institution that provides the value to this. It's Washington wanting to win basketball games that gets Mr. What's his buckets. No one cares. Makes our point worth $2 million. And it getting back to what we were talking about 2 weeks ago about the antitrust litigation in effect and the potential of a settlement that's going to be paid by the universities to the tune of billions of dollars. It's a little bit like, on one hand, the TV contracts have been ridiculous for a long time. The coaching contracts have been ridiculous for a long time. The amount of money poured into facilities has been stupid for a long time. All of that is true. It's also true that now the guys, they deserve a little piece of this. But what you're going to get as a result of all of this is, it seems to me that you're going to kind of kill the golden goose, because the psycho fans, I think, are going to start to lose interest over the next 10 years. The next generation is not going to be as invested. And the way that things used to work, where football and basketball was subsidizing all the other sports, that's about to go by the wayside as well.
Yeah.
So this whole model is going to change in really significant ways. And I don't think anyone but the current and maybe some of the former that are about to get a big settlement payout, football and basketball student athletes are going to benefit from it. I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess I would just say that, listener, if you happen to be around with us and we happen to be around next year, and all of this nonsense is still happening, that I think we got to figure out a better way to talk about these things, because I've not enjoyed the last few weeks from the perspective of being a fan, which is ultimately
very pearl clutchy for the last 2 or 3 minutes of my diatribe.
But I don't think you're wrong. I guess this is there is. Let's use as a microcosm the NCAA EA Sports football game, right?
Which we really shouldn't discuss in any other context but this. Like, let's not get worked up. Continue.
No, but it died, and it died for a really good reason.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely bullshit that they were able to produce a game that included the name, image, and likeness, literally all of those things, of student athletes, and make money on it without their consent.
Right.
And the NCAA and its member institutions sold away rights that they didn't own to EA Sports. In the same way that the NCAA and its member institutions are selling away television rights for these players with their literal name, image, and likeness without compensating the performers. There is no other televised event that doesn't involve somebody's either consent to this free product.
I would say that the athletics did involve their consent. That's for sure. And also there are definitely there's local news that features people. There's
right, but
there's high school sports.
You need
Yeah. Just like you do with football and basketball.
Public access. Okay. On high school.
But the reason
you can appreciate that there's a chasm that exists between those things.
And that's why it's relevant, because the money got so ridiculous in college sports.
Right. So I think we can hold attention in two hands here and have it make sense. That on the one hand, we think, for instance, that the transfer portal is. I've come around to Izzo on the graduation rates aren't great as a consequence of this. That ultimately this is college sports, and that's not panning out particularly well. And we can also say, yeah, okay, but like the college is making a lot of freaking money on this, and the only reason they're making it is because they've obtained athletes who certainly perform at a certain level that makes it entertaining TV. Mm-hmm. But and I don't know, man. I think we've lost the thread here a little bit, but I'll just circle back to that. I didn't think that you were wrong, that the value comes from the emblem on the jersey, and that the compensation, while it should be generous, because if MSU is going to make $1 billion over the next 7 years,
yeah,
like then you can afford to share some of this money.
Yes, and to be entirely frank, like I would so much rather give the guys the cash for it than build another stupid football building with Tom Izzo's name on it. Like my preference would be let's hone in some of the dumb spending that's happening. When you have the worst staff on the planet and those guys get their golden parachutes, let's hone in some of that stuff. Let's give it to the guys. Let's make it equitable. That should all be true. It's just also to bring it back to where we started. It's not particularly fun right now.
No, it's not.
For the people that drive the interest in all of this to begin with.
Yeah, the amount of how much MSU merch do you own?
None. No, loads. I think for a while people would make fun of me and be like, "Oh, do you own anything that doesn't have this emblem on it right here?"
Did I tell you?
Does such a thing exist?
Have I said this on the podcast that I have a coworker who commented that he's like, I don't think I've ever seen you in something that's not MSU gear.
Are you okay? Are you well today?
But then he shared that he went to Texas A&M, and I'm like, doesn't matter. Your school's weirder.
Yeah, you're more of a psycho than I am. Yeah, continue.
But the fact that I get to hang out with two of my best friends, talk about a thing that I care deeply about once a week, and I find myself exhausted. And by the by, we see it in the listener numbers. Like we lost a couple dudes in the transfer portal, and we shed hundreds of listeners in a week because people are just like, I'm checked out. I'm done here. Like I don't care.
Presumably, and we're speculating on that. We don't know, but it stands to reason. Continue.
And that's not like, MSU can have a terrible loss and we'll gain listeners.
Yeah.
I think that's a relevant point where people are like, I don't want to consume content because it sucks. Like there's a camaraderie in when things suck versus the thing that I enjoy is just shitty now.
Yeah.
And eventually this bug is going to either hit enough schools that it becomes a sort of a mass effect event, or we're going to see an additional consolidation of power into a few brands that are able to weather the storm, in much in the same way that, say, tech consolidates into like there are what, 5 companies who own everything.
Yeah, but the difference is, I don't think it actually works that way in
because they need us.
Because it's not they need us. It's they need Purdue. It's that they need Indiana. It's that they need the MAC. It's the that
you think
can't
that the decision makers see that right now, though? Like, if
even if you consolidated college football into the top 10 brands, and we'll concede that MSU is not one of those. Even if you consolidated those in the top 10 brands, you're still going to have your winners and losers, even of that group. And then that's going to slough off the next group of folks that are like, yeah, we're invited to the table, but we're not having a good time, until it gets to the point where whoever's left, Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia or whomever, is looking around, just standing at the top of dead golden gooses. And is that where you want to be? Does that make sense? I would tell you that it does not. But but they'll make a lot of money in the meantime, except for not really.
But also, to what end?
Yeah. So the buildings are more ridiculous, and the coaching salaries are higher.
That's what's wild about all of this. And so I think, listener, that almost all of these public institutions, well, none of them operate their athletic departments at a profit. Yeah. Right? At best, they're squirreling away some money, but remember, these public institutions need to be not for profit.
Yeah.
They need to spend that money. And so they either spend it in other sports, which is great, which also shows that some sports are a fucking sinkhole. Like, you can put swimming, as much money
for example.
You could put literally as much money
in a sinkhole that can be filled in with dirt and earth and debris. Swimming. Sinkhole.
Like, how much can you fund your cross country team? And who's going to show up for that? We'll celebrate the victories here, but let's be very real about what is the, how many fans can you collect for track and field or cross country? And I certainly am not belittling the athletic accomplishments. They're incredible athletes. Yep. But who's going to show up? So you're playing this weird money laundering game with your profits to maintain yourself as not for profit. At best, you're saving your academic portion of the university from having to fund athletics, and athletics is driving folks signing up, right? Like, you get applicants because you have good athletics.
Yep, the front door of the university, as it's been argued in the past.
But to what end? Like, I'm when you play the greed out, who is it for?
Yeah, who benefits?
And I assume you have to look at administrators.
I don't know. Do you think all of a sudden President Kevin G is making the money he's making because of sports? I mean, I think maybe, but I think it's more to do with running a large institution.
Where's the money going? If admissions are up, if tuition is up, and let's not pretend that our dear institution is not just as guilty as every other single institution in raising tuitions and doing shady shit like triple packing people in a room. Mm-hmm. Like, to what end?
Yep.
What's the point? Where does the money go?
Support staff, infrastructure, buildings.
What's the point? I guess it feels like we're in an arms race for a reason that I don't fully understand what we're trying to win.
Yep.
And I'd say that is much about our foes down the road as I would about Alabama, as I would about any other school. Like, I'm not sure what we're doing here.
And I'm not sure what we're doing with this conversation anymore either.
All right. Yeah. That's fair. All right. Last thing, we'll just mention it because it was relevant to last week's Twitter questions. Rules. Tucker has asked the judge to seal his case and vacate the restraining order against him from using his joint funds with his wife as it relates to paying for his legal fees for jerking off on the phone with Brenda Tracy. Claiming that he'll be able to recover money from MSU as a consequence. Maybe that's why to tie it all back in. Maybe that's why we're doing this. Do you have anything you want to say on this, or do you want to get to Twitter question rules?
I just think it's funny that Mel's out here like, hey, whoa, why are we? What's with the laundry? Okay, we're the marital assets will benefit if you just shut up. And then also I'll shut up, even though I asked you, even though I was talking earlier. But now I think we should both shut up. And well, you know what? It's brilliant. It's all brilliant. And if I were MSU's lawyers, I would be licking my chops right now, seeing that they've got to move money around and fight it out in public in order to fund a potential future lawsuit against the university. I mean, we've gotten into this conversation. I don't think we need to have it now, but like we've gamed this out, right? Yeah. This seems to indicate to me that there is weakness, not just in his argument. Of course, as we've discussed at length, there's weakness in his argument. There's weakness in his legal defense ability demonstrated here. And if I were MSU, I think I'd be willing to let this thing play itself out.
I might be willing to flex my endowment and just spend him into the ground if I'm a institution of MSU size. Because I don't think he has scratch.
There's been much speculation about how much of his contract he's going to end up getting. It's been like half, a third. This tells me keep dropping that percentage.
1 milli, Mel. 1 milli.
I don't know at what point MSU decides to just cut a check to like get this thing off the plate and move on, but
I guarantee you,
I don't think Mel's getting his 80 mil, and Brenda Tracy's not getting that either.
No, and I guarantee you that they have run this by outside counsel, and they've asked for a memo. What are the ranges of possible damages we have here? And they're going to the law firm has run through those numbers, and they've said, this is likely, maybe less likely, super unlikely. And MSU is going to look at those first two ranges and say, okay, here's what we're talking about. I'm going to add in the amount of money I'm going to have to spend on attorneys, and I'm going to say that's the maximum I'll spend on Mel. I don't think he has a great case to begin with, but you then add in the multiplier that he might be Poe. Like, MSU might be playing more hardball than I anticipated that they would play. We could end up being wildly wrong, but
the MSU is an institution. We ended up spending time on this. Decided to play hardball with Curtis Blackwell, who was a staffer on a program whose head coach we as an institution probably wanted to retain. So he had the leverage of, I can spread some shit about this program if I want to.
And call Tony Paul.
And I can call the Detroit News and they will print whatever I ask them to. If you're Mel Tucker, any dirt that you've got probably reflects poorly on you as the principal of the program at the time. There might be some stuff in there about athletic department insisted A, B, or C. Doubt.
Right.
So, like, I guess you could try to mess with your relationship with MSU's relationships with donors. I think that's kind of what we saw at first was what they were trying to do. But I think you've got to assume that that's all been played out, smoothed over where it can be smoothed over. Damage is done where damage is done. I don't know that that's an avenue of leverage for our friend Melvin. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. And we will find out, as we learned with the rest of the coaching staff. We will find out what he ends up getting paid. So stay tuned.
Yeah. All right, let's do these Twitter questions. Just going to remind you that if for some reason you'd like to participate via email, you can do so. Can't write 1855@gmail.com. Greg, I also want to suggest that we open the floodgates on segment fishing season.
Oh, wow. Invite that in, huh? Okay. Sure.
I think it's time. We've reached a capacity where we're finding ourselves talking about 4 paragraphs on a survey about name, image, and likeness for an hour. So
segment fish us, listeners. Segment fish us.
You can submit those via email, please. Can't write 1855@gmail.com.
All right. It starts with Mike Jones here this week. Do you consider
do you have any additional Twitter question rules for the competition that you want to just lay out?
You guys covered it really well last week, and I already established my one rule. If you got my reference from earlier, let me know. You won. Do you consider the rumored big man from the portal a legit 5 or a slap in the face, and Tom just trying to fill that 13th scholarship so we have less to bitch about? I think
he is a 5.
He's a legit 5. He's, as we established, maybe not he doesn't have quite the pedigree that we would want. Is slap in the face where we're feeling with this?
No. It's not. And here's the thing. We're the barometer I think that we all need to be reading off of right now has Tom jumped the shark? Because this ad to me is a Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler can get it done. I know they can get it done. We're going to get this done with Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper. And so if they don't, then Tom's lost it. It just is what it is.
You heard it here first.
And you can say he misread last year, but Jackson Kohler did get hurt and missed a great chunk of the season. So I am a skeptic, but I'm willing to say, all right, Tom, you bought your insurance. I'm proud of you. But if you fuck this up, man, I'm gonna be pissed.
So
next up from Mike Jones. EA Sports is bringing back the NCAA football game this year. A leak of the cover came out, and it's disappointing. EA Sports is also looking to target in-game ads based upon location. How do we get a Holocaust museum to advertise for EA Sports in Ann Arbor? You want to explain this?
So in case you missed it, Donovan Edwards is one of the cover athletes for NCAA football 2025. And in case you missed it, Donovan Edwards did not put up the most statistically impressive season last year. And in case you missed it, Donovan Edwards tweeted an anti-Semitic trope and doubled down on it. And the whole university backed him on it. It was fun. It's a good time. In all of this, I think maybe in our excitement about the games coming back generally, we forgot that it was EA that was bringing it back. And we probably should have tempered some of that excitement along the way. Because, of course, there were going to be ads and microtransactions and terrible decisions made. I didn't want to talk about this in great detail because, of course, they were going to put a Michigan player on the cover after they just had the season that they had. It was a bad choice in what player that was going to be. But
who would they have put?
I don't know. Will Johnson or someone. I don't know. Who cares? But I'm probably still going to play it at some point. So what are you going to do? Next up from Kate Wall, who was the most unfairly judged MSU athlete? This is inspired by Lewerke starting a UFL game. He's my pick after Malik. I'll also say the Connor Cook hate was dumb because he made a playoff and was a top 3 MSU quarterback ever. So I don't care if he was a bad teammate or whatever the narrative is.
This is tough. I think maybe Kenny Goins?
Unfairly judged, you think?
I mean, he got a lot of hate until he made that one shot.
Yeah.
Ben Carter?
Yeah.
Not Ben Carter's
redemption.
fault.
He had a big redemption. Since there's no one here.
LJ Scott, unfairly judged as good.
It's good. Judged as value add to team. I might put out there, considering that he's managed to stick around in the league, maybe a Max Christie. If only there was someone here that could take the counter to that argument. Until then, I would submit to you, listener and listener guest, Max Christie. Next up from Beth Amaro, regarding the Mangum versus Shelton Davis Twitter, the Shelton/Davis Twitter dust up last week, were you A, blissfully unaware, B, amused but detached, C, deliberately ignoring, D, disgusted or something similar, or any parting thoughts on the melee? We kind of covered this, but where do you land on this distribution?
None of these. I want to be very, very clear. Fuck Mangum. I hope he gets blasted. Truly, I hope he looks like an idiot for most of the season. I don't even care if he commits to Michigan. The notion that he was going to visit that place, dead to me. So I was enjoying it. I was not amused but detached. I'm in it. I hate him. Bye. You don't have a spot on the team. I hope you end up at Longwood's football team.
I actually didn't know that Mangum was still a player on the team. I thought in the Ohio State game, he was reduced to a pink mist. That was the end of both his career and his life.
Is that when his head was collapsed in?
It was when it looked like maybe he was going to expire on the football field. So anyway, I was the popcorn eating meme. The GIF to answer your question directly, Beth.
All right, next up, Joe Ashworth. Greg, did you see the Northern Lights, or are you too dead inside to feel a sense of wonder anymore?
Yeah, Joe Ashworth, I was promised Northern Lights, and then what I was given was like a slight haze that you have to look at through your camera on your phone. So hey, Joe Ashworth, yeah, those were not the Northern Lights. I would say that this was like just a very unimpressive approximation of the Northern Lights that we saw.
I talked with a coworker earlier today who's in the UK who took a great picture, and he said the exact same thing. He's like, yeah, there's what you saw and there's what your camera got, and they were very different things.
Two entirely different experiences.
And he had a great picture. Next up from Joe Ashworth, should MSU have brought Matty Sissoko back, or is it possible that losing him ends up being addition by subtraction? I don't know when this question came in, but we kind of touched on this, Greg, but I'm going to leave it to you.
I think that this is going to end up being a slight addition by subtraction situation.
If we land him, we should be clear he might go to VCU. We're in competition with VCU.
Well, I suppose the VCU has been good in the past.
We deserve to lose to VCU. Next up from Joe Ashworth, next up, Stupid as Shardy. Anytime you can add a center who played 17 minutes for the Big South, you have to do it, right?
I mean, yeah. I take back everything I just said about VCU. You have to. Duh. Come on. Come on.
Does VCU play in the Big South?
No, Longwood, Big South, or
oh yeah. No, Long was in the Big South. I just didn't know, and it doesn't matter. Next up,
brilliant.
Thomas Zambiasi. If 2016 doesn't go sideways, does D'Antonio step away earlier? Seems like he hung on longer than necessary to try and help the program.
I mean, you have to remember that he got that big longevity bonus, and then quit the next day. That was a big factor in all of this, as it turns out.
How did they not offer to pay that out earlier?
Yeah, correct.
Are you mad at him about that?
No.
Someone making millions and millions of dollars for multiple years in East Lansing.
What are you trying to say about my home and my people? No, I'm not.
To be very clear, I want to move there and I love it, but like it's a lower cost of living.
It is definitely a lower cost of living.
I love it there. I want to move there. I'm not talking shit.
No, I don't personally. It was the cost of doing business at the time. I don't blame.
They should have offered to pay it out earlier.
Correct. That's the move.
Next up, Thomas Zambiasi. Do you have a favorite Spartan small and mid-sized business show? Spartan marching band show. Potentially from 2017 to 2019. Thomas, this feels very pointed to someone looking for some props, but whatever.
It's just someone. There have been some really good ones over the years. I'm trying to think.
Pre-Pandy, when we sucked at football, pre-Pandy.
Yeah. I mean, there's not one that like immediately jumps out to me, but like the Spartan Marching Band basically never disappoints. I remember one time they tried to do their own like original thing, and they did this big like art installation thing. This was years ago. This was before 2017, 2019. I love the SMB. It's one of the best parts of the live in stadium experience.
It is.
And I'm so appreciative of the work that they put into that unpaid work. I'll note. So, do you have one that you've watched on like YouTube or something that you really like?
No, I normally
they are available now on YouTube. They weren't for a long time, but now they are.
I look for bands that I like that have been covered, and I haven't seen anything that captures me. I'll say this, Thomas. Sometimes the taste is a little dated, but you all rock and you're awesome. But like the selection, the performance is fantastic. The selection could use some more fun.
Next up from G Money, why was Mel able to trick us so much into thinking he was a good coach at the time?
Well, Plum and I talked about this last week, that really the notion of proposing on the first date should have been a red flag that we caught a lot earlier. A lot earlier.
I don't think, and this is not just revisionist, and I'm go back into the depths of our back catalog, listener, and correct me on this. But with the exception of the 11-2 season, the Peach Bowl season, I think we kept Mel Tucker at a pretty significant arms race and remained skeptical throughout. And he gave us reasons to be skeptical, whether it was NF Tuck, whether it was the departure in vibe with all of the recruiting stuff, whether it was his in-game decisions that were made. I mean, we were brutal to him at times. I also remember I was never entirely sold on him as a recruiter. So, I mean, I think
he had a moment in the sun with us. A moment in the sun with us.
Yeah,
but I do think we. we saw through it quickly. It didn't come full circle, but started to be like, no.
I don't want to claim that we were on here like this guy's a snake oil salesman. Don't give him that big contract. After the 11-win season, we were like, if you think you've got your guy, you gotta do what it takes to keep your guy.
But you know who was saying that from the jump? Raymond Chains.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's worth shouting out that Raymond did say literally that from the jump. I also, G-Money, I'll just also say, I don't know that we ever thought he was a good coach. I thought we loved Kenneth Walker. Like, I don't know that we were ever on here saying he's a good coach.
I think maybe what it was is we would talk about how he's a CEO type guy.
Yeah.
Maybe. And from what we've heard, clearly not, actually, as it turns out, a CEO type guy. But what we thought was happening, and the most credit I think we ever gave him, was he had a vision for the program and he was doing what it took to execute on that. And it went sideways.
Next up from G Money, as much as I would love to win some NF Tucks, this is a reference to last week's announcements regarding the Twitter questions, which I know Greg and his wife watched together.
Yeah, we just sat.
She texted me to say how good I look, but
that's what she said.
She said, "Do you not have lines on your forehead?" Which I was like, sweet. How sure are we that this isn't one of this? I'm sorry. How sure are we that one isn't just a video of him pleasuring himself while staring at the camera?
Well, I think we would have heard about that when NF Talk initially came out. But
did anyone buy any of them?
Maybe that's what's happening in that Discord server that you get access to after you purchase it. Next up, and finally, Plum, what's with the Rob Dyrdek? Dyrdek. Disrespect.
Which is a reference to us not being able to, and someone told me what it was. And now I can't remember it. What show does he host? No. Ridiculousness on MTV.
Oh, Robin Big. Yeah. That dude.
What's with the hate? I'll speak for Plum here. It's just a show of people getting hit in the nuts.
Yeah. I never had a problem with it. It was just never really my thing at the same time.
It's MTV doing America's Funniest Home Videos, right? With like a Daniel Tosh slant. Whatever. It's fine.
Next up from Dan Hellpepper, since the podcast has entirely embraced CNN, how long until we hear that JFK Jr. will be receiving the 13th scholarship to play the 5?
Honestly, you could convince me that Brainworm Man is just as capable as...
That's RFK
Seisman.
Jr. This is JFK Jr. You need to catch up on your CNN. You need to catch up on your CNN.
Sorry, I just saw a little spider running by here.
We're missing so much from there was a whole CNN mythology that we're really lacking right now that needs to come back. Next from Dan Hellpepper, is it legal to call other people performative when you have a mustache? Man, our listener guest getting a lot.
Yeah, what did he say?
I don't know.
Do you recall? I don't know. Okay. Well, he's not here to answer for his crimes, and I refuse to answer for him.
Yeah. Yeah. He really doesn't reflect on us in any way. That's a disclaimer. That's on every episode. You just haven't seen it. And then finally from Dan Hellpepper, since we know who everyone's favorite mustachioed person is, and I assume Dan is referring to Hitler here, who are the hosts number 2 through 4? It's like a Hitler joke is
the pause was perfect.
It was. You have to do a little like head fake.
I know. Like you rank your attributes and funnies up here, but like you nailed the timing on that one. Well, obviously number 2 is
Hulk
Hogan. Names today. Sure, Hulk Hogan. Who's the guy who's on? He was on Friends. He dated. God damn it!
Mustache dude on Friends. Oh.
Tom Selleck.
Oh, Tom Selleck. I got it.
Yeah. Sorry, listener.
Pretty good.
That's 3.
Yep.
Charlie Chaplin, because if number 1 is who we say it is, then number 3 has got to be the person who had the most number 1 version of the mustache, right?
Indeed, the number 1. Next up from Dan Hellepepper, and finally, since we know who, nope, all done. Next from the Key Ski, best way to spend a Tuesday night in EL when you have to work the next day.
Well, Greg and I have done this very experiment.
Yeah, we've lived this.
So the thing is, you got to start somewhere to lay a foundation. I think we've come around to Dagwoods as the place to go.
Sure, of course. Glad you
start there.
That. Appreciate that.
And then you got to venture as far to the west as possible. I'm sorry, east as possible, and then work your way back west.
Mm-hmm.
So you might stop at the Barrel. You might stop at the Barrel for like a Long Island or something like that. A beer, and then you got to head to the Tin Can. You're gonna do a pudding shot, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Nothing says.
I'm sorry. You should have put your name in with Rico at Crunchies before you started all of this.
Yep.
And then you're gonna stop by the Riv. Then you're gonna head to Rick's. You might knock on the door at Dublin. Who's to say? And then you're gonna end your night at Crunchies. And then on the way to Crunchies, you're gonna stop by Delta Arms, and you're gonna try and break in.
Now he's talking crazy. No one knows actually what he's referring to anymore. Someone do a wellness check on Mike Jones while we go to the next question from the Key Ski. Who would make a better GM for football, Jones or Grooch? Well, we kind of saw a simulated version of this in fantasy football for a couple seasons. Jonesy, do you want to tell the people how that went between the two of us?
Oh, well, you're going to land on Greg because he's 6'5", and he's just going to have more of that football bod approach. He's going to tell folks that he's on the Soylent diet because he used to be an offensive lineman weighing 300 pounds, though he's never weighed above $120. But that's that route you're going to go.
Yeah. And then with Jones, people are going to see that he's lashing out and desperate, and they're going to be turned off by that.
Wait, is the 120 true? Is the 120 true? Are you feeling hurt right now?
Will not sign with your team. Following from the Key Ski, who would make a better GM for a b-ball team, Plum or Stevie Izzo? Stevie Izzo can call LeBron, is my understanding. So can Plum?
And Plum is more in the vein of Wojcik than anyone else. So I don't know that you want him around. If you have a problem with Wojcik, you have a problem with Plum coaching that basketball team. Straight verbal abuse. Let's head to B-Low Show. What's your guys' favorite and least favorite parts of summer? Humidity is my least favorite.
Humidity sucks. Shorts. I like that. Give me a layer. I need a layer, generally speaking.
To bulk up.
Yep. Because it's $120 under here. I think I'm going to go the opposite of Jonesy on this. I think the fact that I have to mow the lawn several times a week is a take off summer we could do without you situation. What do you got?
Off. Strange group.
mean, that's a reference. That's to help everyone in their Twitter question competition, by the way. What do you have as your least favorite part of summer? I think everyone knows the favorite parts. Humidity is a pretty good one.
Yeah, but porch beers, favorite part.
Yeah. Next up from Ali, did Greg have to put Mike on his shoulders in order for him to see the Northern Lights?
Oh, Ali.
Come on up here, bud. Come on, bud. It was past Jonesy's bedtime. Next from Ali,
it wouldn't support MSU, me anyway.
Yeah. Which MSU football legend would you not want to start Twitter beef with? And why is it Denikos Allen? Very good proposed player. Do not mess with Denikos Allen. What do you think?
That is your favorite framing of a question, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I'll take it in this case because it was actually the right answer. I can't beat Denikos Allen.
For me, it's Jeremiah Warwick. Which,
because he laid the wood against Wisconsin, to quote.
Yeah, that is the most violent hit I've ever seen. And I think we all had a good laugh at it because he got off the field. And then I think we learned over time that maybe he didn't get off the field in life, probably from that hit. But still, craziest hit I've seen in my lifetime. That was when helmet to helmet was allowed in college football.
And encouraged. Is there anyone that like really goes hard in the beef, like makes it personal on Twitter?
Kari Crump.
Okay. Kari Crump, maybe. I see what you're referencing. Next up from Carl, you do too much, bro. Tom Izzo was famously one of the least online coaches of all of sport. If you were tasked with baiting him via shitpost, what, if any, levers do you think you could pull to turn Tom into an unhinged reply guy? You try to coach his team. Look out.
Yeah, that's it, right? Maybe you could invoke family somehow.
Yeah, I think you could go after one of his dudes personally, and that would definitely turn Tom unhinged, because we see that offline occasionally. Tom has never quite said, I'm a man, I'm 40, but he's been in the neighborhood a couple of times. So that would be my go-to. If I really wanted to needle Tom Izzo, I would find a guy that he kind of likes, and I would make it personal.
You mean like Jackson Kohler?
I guess he must really like Jackson Kohler. Next up from Beppe Plum, can you resuscitate a dog with CPR?
No, you can. You can
resuscitate a dog with CPR. Just don't sing, quote, another one bites the dust. Queen may sue you. Now you know. And, Kentucky Derby horse racing. Man, rather see some Kerm lose a horse race. All praise to our former Spartan players for A+ beefing with some forgotten brother. And rant of the week, whomstever amongst us that put the tagline 2 guys, 1 pod on the Twitter X page, as if they're saying Plum is not worthy of being a man. He's a real man, or that he's not worth mentioning. If the latter, good play. None of that, quote, forgot to update horsosity.
So, wait, is Plum actually Beppe Plum? He's intimated that we know who he is. I think this is getting too close to... look, this is week 3 of only 2 guys, 1 pod. And so we're going to stick by it. Also, Beppe, you get the reference. So be cool, man. And that's fine. And by the by, we have not forgotten to update that. That has been deliberate.
You know how I know Beppe is not Plum's burner?
Why?
It's here every week. Except for it's. I mean, after I just took a week off, like the stings kind of.
Yeah, and then you spent the one previous off camera.
Yes.
Because you were in the La Quinta suites or whatever.
I gotta have my setup, man, or I can't let the people see me. Next up from Momopoly, what other Big Ten team/school apparel do you have in your household? When and why was it worn last?
Oh, Big Ten, because I was going to say, you're currently... I don't have anything else.
We have one of those.
What do you have?
What do I have? That's big. Other Big Ten.
Oh no, it says household. It says household. It says household.
Yeah. It's Indiana stuff, and it's because we are so forks down. We live it day in, day out. We burn Indiana Hoosiers in effigy here each day. And I know that usually has a racial component that we should be careful about, but I think people also understand that Indiana Hoosiers are very extraordinarily white, so we don't have to worry about that in this case.
So it's safe.
And we have one of those old Rasputin rivalry trophy things. It's on display because, again, forks down. But I don't think we have representation of any other Big Ten university in this house that I'm aware of.
And why would you?
Exactly. I was worried for a moment. Maybe we have like the West Coast ones because we've been to Seattle a few times, been on Washington's campus, but I don't think we've ever picked anything up.
Yeah. All right. Next up from Momopoly, there is merit to dreaming big. So, is Izzo's plan/desire of another national championship before retiring just talk to get through another season or two? Or is there no one in the camp to look at or face it realistically? Or do we just go for the ride? Momopoly, I'm sorry, you just keep...
I think this is a fair question, though. I think what Momopoly is saying here is Tom just trying to buy time, or is he sincere about this? I think he is sincere.
Buy time for what?
This. Yeah, he's an extraordinarily rich man with whatever. He can do whatever he wants. I think he means this. I think we just differ with him and whether or not he's actually doing what it takes.
I don't think anyone can look themselves or another human being in the eyes and say, I don't think Tom Izzo is super competitive.
Right.
You're an idiot, truly. If you think Tom Izzo isn't the most competitive person that you will have met in your entire life, then I don't know what to tell you. You're not smart. You may think he's wrong, and that's a very valid critique to have. But this notion that Tom Izzo doesn't want to win another national championship is... Yeah. I'm sorry. He yells at like I've never seen a more competitive person.
Yeah. We talk about being psycho fans. He's psycho.
He has us all trumped in this capacity.
Yeah. It's just that we differ a little bit in our appraisal of whether we're actually on that track right now.
We want Tom to win.
Yeah. Next up from Mr. Neurotic Pants. This week in Spartan Nation, A.D. Heller calls Jake Boston in the office after he's quoted by the LSJ saying, quote, I'll be happy if my legacy at MSU is getting us to the 500 mark.
Jesus Christ.
Elsewhere, Izzo indicates that he's also satisfied with the 500 level in conference play. So I think we've proven ourselves. We might not even need a center or fifth player on the court next year. I just need to get more out of my guards. And 3, ESPN airs a feature of the current endeavors of the Reverend Mel Tucker, but viewers point out that the voiceover seems to be saying Mel Tugger. As a televangelist, Tucker sets up a hotline for spiritual guidance and, quote, uplifting phone calls. That's like the televangelist version of NFTs, I suppose. Pretty good episode. Did Jake Boss actually say this?
No, he didn't.
Because
it's a real bummer because Graham started giving Jake a bit of love because Jake got himself to, I think, 7th in the Big Ten, which meant he was going to make the Big Ten tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just got pantsed again in a big way. I also think this is fair, listeners. Do you expect MSU to compete truly in every sport?
This and the next question might be segment fishing then in that way. Like, we are seeing that MSU can compete in every sport. There was a time where the athletic department was like, we are going to focus on certain sports and we don't care about what happens in the other ones. But we're seeing that MSU can be competitive across all of them.
When you build your stadiums in a floodplain, right?
Yeah, that's sus. I'll admit, as much as I love walking past that area, it's sus.
Oh, they're beautiful when they're not flooded.
Yep, several months a year that happens. That they're not flooded,
and you do encounter the weather challenges of being in northern school. Like, it's fair to say there's a reason the SEC and the California teams are dominant, and Southwest teams, I guess, is a better way of saying it. But like, so what's your ask, I guess, is my point. And I think my ask would be tear the fields down. You can build a pool over there that has red cedar water flowing through it. And then change where your fields are. It's not working.
Next up from Mr. Neurotic Pants, between Barnett and Tucker, what were the top 5 stupidest in-game coaching mistakes? Oh, God. This is a good segment, Fish. We should come back to this one.
I got 2 out of the 5. Both times that Barnett called for an onside kick,
the onside kicks come immediately to mind.
Anytime that Barnett played Sam Levitt without a meaningful plan to incorporate him for the remainder of the season. So we've got 3 out of the 5. I think there was a timeout that was an all-timer by Barnett. It's escaping it. You could pick 5 for Barnett and not even mention Tucker, is my point.
Yeah. And then
he's not a good head coach.
Tuck had a few of his own. Use of timeouts, end of play, clock type stuff. Tucker had a couple too. Wins. Next up from Mr. Neurotic Pants, wins and losses aside, what do you expect to see coaching improvements next year now that we have a good coach who is demonstrably competent? I will say, do we? Like, we haven't seen it here yet. I would caution that. And I think that actually sets up Upper Deck Jerk Guy's second question. On a scale of 1 to 5, with Tucker being 1 and Antonio being a 5, where will the Smith program be? I think these are kind of the same question. Speculate on this, Mike Jones.
Well, we've seen Tucker do it at an under-resourced Power 5 conference program. Or not Tucker. Did I say Tucker? I meant Smith.
Smith.
Whereas Tucker did not have a demonstrable record before.
Right.
So there is a big difference. Whether what Smith built in a prescient, or not prescient, Smith was able to build something that peaked in the NIL era. The beginning, the nascent days, right, of the NIL era. So, like, who's to say whether that's repeatable or sustainable? But I think it's, Mr. Neurotic Pants did call out, I got to give the flowers again, did call out early that, like, Tucker hadn't done shit, and we hired him. And then really did live off the back of a couple players to secure one of the single largest contracts in college football history until it wasn't. But
until it wasn't one of the greatest euphemisms of all time.
I will say this. I can't say that we're going to replicate D'Antonio. I do have a fair amount of confidence that Smith will deliver competence. And at 44, I think is how old he is. That if he sticks with us, that he will meet or exceed D'Antonio's win totals.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess that takes us to the last question from the Upper Deck Jerk Guy. What unique choice of music should the Spartans use for entry into the stadium? Good, but no one else uses it.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
It do be like that right now. Is there other options? Is there like a Daft Punk that we could do? Is there like a it seems like
Electric Six.
Oh yeah. Danger High Voltage. Speaking of dating ourselves, yeah.
It'd be local. Dick Valentine.
This is another good segment, Fish. Listeners, what are some potential stadium anthems that are out there that are not being utilized as stadium anthems that you think have the potential of being stadium anthems that should be in consideration? Comment below. Like and subscribe. Comment below. We've got multiple good segment fishes. You got what you wanted here, Mike Jones. Anything else before we hang it up?
No. Twitter question competition is going to start soon. TBD on when. It might be sprung on you. Who's to say? We might come up with some more rules. But do drop your segment fishes to can'tread1855@gmail.com. Like and subscribe. Blah, 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 blah. Greg, it's good to see you. This was a good chat. Go Green.
Go White.